Welcome to the Part Modeling Challenge number 1. In these videos, I search the internet for some interesting working drawings, and when I find some, like this one we have on screen now, I like to try and reproduce them in SolidWorks. This gives you an opportunity to see how I would do them in a step-by-step process, and gives you a chance to see a professional SolidWorks user actually create parts like this in SolidWorks. And so it gives you an opportunity to learn things such as design intent and maybe some interesting features you didn't know about. So in this design challenge, we're going to create this part that I found online. And a really easy way of finding drawings like this, I find, is actually have a look on Pinterest. Search Pinterest for something like SolidWorks drawings or SolidWorks working drawings, and you'll find a lot of these kind of examples. So this particular one was found on Pinterest, and we are going to recreate it in SolidWorks. You can download a copy of this art. You can download a copy of this working drawing in the description, so check that out. I recommend you download it and then have it on your screen. That way you can follow along and I don't have to keep bringing it up on screen to show you all. It is also recommended to, when you do these videos, is first download a copy of the PDF, this image here, and attempt to do it yourself if you feel comfortable, and then come back and have a look at how I would have done it and sort of compare your results and learn from that experience. So let's get right into it. So of course, the first thing we need to do is start a drawing. So we're going to go to New, Start a Part, and there we go. We are now ready. When looking at this part, it has a lot going on. You have some interesting shape that we have to consider. So we kind of have this plate looking design, but it also raises in the center and comes back down. You can see by the isometric how this sort of looks. There are some slots and some holes cut through, which there are some interesting shapes here that we need to consider. And I think there is a lot of detail in this drawing that you really have to pay attention to if you want to design it properly. Everything in this drawing is available. I've been through it already and there is nothing missing. So as long as you just pay attention to all the minor details, all these cutouts, all these expanded, exploded views or close-up views, all the information is there. There are a few ways of going about designing this. The first I was doing is just sketching the whole profile and mirroring it, mirroring the actual sketch entities. But I found this created a lot of work. So in this example, we're actually going to just use symmetry. We're going to model half of this part and then just mirror over the rest. Hopefully that saves a bit of time in the design process. Another thing you need to consider is how to actually get this shape, this sort of raised center which drops back down, but it also pulls back on itself in a top view. One way of looking at it is to create a block and then kind of cut these sections through the block. But I find there is a better way. Whenever you have shapes like this, where you have kind of like one shape from a top profile, but then from a front profile, you kind of have a different shape, you should do a feature that's called intersect. This way you can actually build two shapes, so a top profile and a front profile, and then intersect them so that the mass in the middle between those two shapes is kept. I find that is actually the best way. So you're creating two solids and then intersecting them to create one solid body in the middle. So that's what we're going to do in this lesson. I think that's a really important thing that you should take from this lesson is intersecting parts. The first thing we're going to do is actually draw our top view. And we're just going to draw half of the part. So we might start with a midpoint line from our origin point, and we're going to click on that and switch it to a construction line. Our center point is going to be that circle in the middle. So we're going to create a circle. Actually, we could probably just create an arc. So we're going to go, that's not the arc we want. We actually want a center point arc. So we'll click this one here and rotate that around. And we are going to give that a dimension. And this one is actually the small hole in the middle. When you look at the side profile, it kind of steps from a large hole to a small hole and then a medium-sized hole. So there's a particular way we need to do this. And it is just going to start with the small one. So that's going to be a 24. And we are also going to do a center point arc. And this is going to be our medium point. And this one is 43. And something to keep in mind actually is the dimensions we have on screen are actually diameters and these are radiuses. So one way of doing that is we can actually say 24 divided by 2, which will give us an actual radius instead. And this one is the same, 43 divided by 2. So that will give us a proper radius instead of the circumference dimensions that we have on the working drawing. The next part is actually drawing the outside profile. What we might do first, we know there's a circle out here somewhere, and this has a diameter of 50. We might also just put a center line. I'll make that a midpoint line just to make it a bit clearer. And we'll change this to a construction. We also need a center line from this midpoint, which we'll use soon as well, which will be at an angle. And there is a dimension here of 22 degrees. So this is going to come into play later on. We also want a center line here, as some of the dimensions, such as this circle, is based around that. So we're going to put that as 40. We're now going to create some of this outside profile. So the first thing we can do, we're going to create a center point arc again from here. We're going to just sort of rotate this around a little over rotation so then we can trim back. We also have another center point arc somewhere here. And the interesting thing about this bottom arc is the center is not at this center point as well. It actually, when you finish modeling, it actually comes down just a little bit. So let's just draw this center point arc, say about here. And we're going to over rotate a bit and just put it about there. Now we know our radius for this is 35. And what we want is a line that's going to be tangent between these two. An easy way of doing this is just to pick a point on the line and a point on this line, and just to make sure that, okay, so there is a tangent there and a tangent there already, so that is done. We can go ahead and trim this back. That creates our first bottom arc along here, and we also need an arc that sort of comes out through here. We also may we need to have a dimension out to this point as well. So this is going to be 200 divided by 2, which is 100, but we're just going to use actual formulas in this case. And we also know this has a radius of 35 for this larger one, so we're going to put that in place as well. This just helps start to lock in all these positions, and we're going to attempt to create this arc along here as well. So the way we can do this is actually use I think it is a 3-point arc. We'll try that. So we can click this one and we can click. Okay, we can do it this way. So we click on this line. We're just going to bring it a bit over and then just drop it down. We need, rotate it out so we can go back to normal 2. We need the center point of this arc to be in line with that. So we find that point. We can click on this. Let's try that again. We'll use the center point in this case. Okay, there we go. Make vertical. We can trim this back. And our radius for this is 200. And again, just trim this little edge here. Okay, so it's coming along pretty well. We just need to find what is keeping these parts from fully constrained. Okay, so we know when I drag this down, we know there's no tangent relation here, so we can add one in, make tangent. So you can see this is now locked in. We can drag these parts to see what happens. So it looks like there must be some sort of vertical relation going on here. We have a look at the drawing. Okay, so we know this line is going to be parallel with this line. That's how we can constrain these parts. So if we click that one, go make parallel, and you can see our sketch is all nice and defined now. We just need a couple more things. There is a slot in this position, just along here. So I might just drag this out a bit, and I'll show you an easy way to make a quick, easy slot. We can actually use the slot tool for this one. So what we might do is go to our slot tool. We want a straight slot, so we pick 2 points. We want a point here and maybe a point here, and then just let it drag out a bit. We should have selected dimension, so we might do that again. So I'll show you what I mean. So if we go back to this slot pick a point here, pick a point here. We make sure add dimensions is ticked. It's not going to like that. The slot tool is really slow when it's doing that expansion part. So we'll try one more time. We're going to add dimension first. Now we can pick our points. Just give it a second. Okay, now that's better. That's better. So here we don't need to worry about this dimension too much, but this one we need to change, and it is 1.5. So that's going to be the thickness of our slot. Try that again, 1.5. Okay, there we go. The important dimension to note is where this starts is from an angular dimension. And if you want to lock a dimension, so you want to drag it out, but it keeps going to a horizontal, you can actually right click. You can see the little icon wants to lock it. And this way it will lock it to that angle. Drop that in. The dimension for this is 48. This length here doesn't matter too much as long as we get a little bit of that overlap. The next one, we have another slot here, but this slot, if you pay attention, it's actually an angled slot. It's not a straight slot. And there's a really easy way of actually doing this. What you want to do is just draw a line, and then you can offset entities to create a slot. So I'll show you what I mean. So what we can actually do is offset entities. We can use this one, change direction, and we're going to make this. Actually, no. We'll try that again. So we're going to create a center point arc. It's going to be actually from the same point. So it's going to be from here. It's going to be around here somewhere, and we're just going to drag it out. So it's going to look like that. We can change that to construction geometry, I think. We can dimension this one, and this is where you have to pay attention, because the measurement, I'll actually bring this down so you can see, the measurement, the 207, is actually to the outside edge of that slot. But what we're working with here is the center. We also have a 32, which defines this end point as well. So we can dimension that part, which is going to be from here to here. And that's going to be 32 divided by 2, because we're working with halves for everything here. And what we need to do is, if we look at this image again, it's actually going to be the width of this slot is 15. So half of that is 7.5. And that outside edge is 207. So if we want to get the midline, it's going to be radius 207 plus 7.5. So we can do a radius, and we can actually just use an equation for this. So we can say equals 207 plus 7.5 equals, and that gives us where our slot is. Now we can use the offset entities, clicking on that, and we want bidirectional, so it's both sides. We want a width of 7.5 because it's working with the center, and we want to cap the ends, so it is an arc. And then we can push OK. Now we don't need this end line, so we can just delete that. And there you go. That's an easy way to create an arced slot like that. The final piece of the sketch we need is this little shape that's cut out here. Actually, we also need a circle here as well. So we can quickly and easily make that circle, which is just a circle. It's probably around here somewhere. The dimension for that is 80 from the center. So that's 80 divided by 2 for this line. It's 40. And then we have a 20, so 20 height for this line. And finally, we need a dimension for that. And this hole it's actually 2 holes. So the first one has a circumference of 10.5. And there is, when you have a look at this hole is actually this. If you have a look, it says C, and on the drawing it should have so this C area, this cut through, is in line with this hole. So that's how we know that is this actual feature here. So we got a 10.5 and then a 22, which is a bit bigger at the base of it. So we need a secondary circle in the same location. And in this case, so you don't have to drop a circle and then dimension it afterwards. You can actually just dimension it before you push enter. So this case it is 22. So that's just a quicker way of doing circles and not having to dimension it afterwards. We actually have some weird offset thing here, so we can delete that. That's not needed. It's probably when I was doing the offset there, it's created it there as well. So the final piece is this little function, this little feature here, this little cutout, which is detailed here. So what I'm going to do with this one is actually quickly draw like a rough idea of it. It looks something like this. It comes, oops, don't know why it does that sometimes. Let me try that again. So we want edge here. It comes back at an angle and then it comes back to this point. And then we can start adding our relations. So we know this line and this line is parallel. No, this one is vertical, which it already has. These two are also parallel. And then we know there is a 22-degree angle between these two lines. We then can add our fillets. So there's a 6mm fillet in each corner. Click OK. So now we have our basic shape. We have 15 width, and from the center of this to the outside line is 13. Sorry if you can hear that background noise. And then from the edge is an 8. Okay, that is almost locked in place. It's pretty much locked in the shape of it, but we need to lock in the location of it now. If we have a look, we can see that there is a 55 dimension to this point. 52, sorry. So 52. And there we go. Our basic sketch is now complete. So we'll close that sketch and move on to the next part. With this first sketch done, we can now move on to the next part, which is actually building the two intersecting bodies. The reason why I did the sketch first is when you create an intersecting body from a sketch, you can't add all these finer details in there because they can't kind of be reused after the fact the intersected bodies have been created. So what I like to do, I create this and then I can use the overall shape of it to create the first body. So we can do this. We're going to create another sketch on the top plane, and I'm going to offset these entities. Sorry, not offset, we want to convert entities. So we want to convert this one, and this one, this one, this one, and this one. Click OK, and then we just trim this bit here and this bit here, and that creates our first profile, and we can exit that sketch. Now we need to create the front view. So looking at a front view, we create a sketch. So what we're trying to do is create this profile now, but because we're only doing half of it, we just do this side of it. So it's a fairly straightforward object. So what we want to do, our origin point is going to be here. So it's going to drop down and go across. So we can just basically rough out the shape of it. Oops, goes there. I'm not going to worry about the fillets just yet. I'll just start that command again. Drops down, goes across, comes down. Now it needs to come down to this point here, which is where it finishes, but we're just going to deal with that in a moment. Okay, so our profile will be something like that. We need to make this vertical. These two lines are going to be parallel, and these should already be automatically parallel anyway. Well, they're going to be horizontal. But okay, now we can start dimensioning. So we can add our 32 widths, and we also need to add our angle in here, which is 40, and our radiuses, etc. So we can begin by doing this side, which is 32. And this is also 32 on this side. We can add a angular dimension here of 40, and the height is 28. You might not see it here. So you can see here from the base, and it goes across to the bottom side is 28. So we can use that dimension. So we're looking at this, and this would be 28. And therefore there is another dimension here as well, which is the height, which is 60, which it should automatically do anyway. You can see it's actually not a driven, it's automatically set to that. We do need a width here, which I figured it out before, but it is still 32. So we can put another 32 here. So that should tighten it up. And if we try and move these, you can see they move horizontally. So we need some sort of constraint in there. And if you look at the drawing, there's a 66 from this outside edge to the intersection of these lines, which is pretty much here. But when I put the fillet here, it's going to disappear. So we might go ahead and start adding those filleted edges in first anyway. And we can just go through. We know we have one of 30 at this point. We also have a 30 at this point. And then we have a 19 here. And then the last one, which is the top edge, is a 20. And we have finished the fillets. So we want that 66 to be the point where the two lines meet. So what we can do is just use some center lines, making sure they are collinear. And if you can't find a collinear relation, just drop them there first. Another center line. This one should be easier. There we go. So that one's just horizontal. We want to make these two lines collinear. That way they stay in line with each other. And then we want to trim those two lines. So that will make from here to this point 66. It looks like we need one more dimension, which is going to be the overall length or width. So basically from the midpoint out to the very end, we need to find that dimension. And you can see that dimension isn't obvious on the drawing. So we have to actually use some maths here. So we got 200 to the center of this circle, and then we got 35 to this radius. So it's going to be 100 plus 35, making it 135. So if we dimension from here to here, making that 135, and clicking OK, and then that should be it. And you can see it is in line with that edge there. And that finishes that sketch. That's all we need to do on that edge. Okay, so now we have our two profiles. I'm just going to hide this first one because it's a little messy and I don't need to use it. These are the two profiles I need to use here. So the first thing we need to do is create some body. So we're going to pick this profile and we want to make sure it is at least as high as that. You could just use an overall height as well, which we know to be 60. So we could just say 60. And then we need to do the same thing. Clicking this profile, we're going to change it to mid-plane, and we're just going to drag it out to a point that is beyond the first body. Before you push OK, you want to make sure Merge Results is unchecked. Click OK. And we now actually have two solid bodies. If you have a look here, you'll see solid bodies 2, which is this section and this section. And from that, we are going to intersect the two bodies and just leave the inside geometry. So we can do that by going to Features, and you should see Intersect. It's going to ask to pick your two bodies. So you're going to pick that one and that one. We want to create both, and you click on intersect, and then it's going to have this box of options here, and you can just sort of tick through and see what it is removing. So we get rid of those. So we can see this last piece is remaining. If I click on that, it's going to remove all of it. So that is the last piece. And as you can see, that is the shape we want. So we click OK, and we now have one solid body, and it is the actual shape that we want. So this is a much easier way of creating these weird shapes where it has multiple angles, but from different actual views. So from the front and the top, you can just intersect multi-bodies and create the inside geometry that you need. I find it's a much easier way than creating one large block and then cutting away pieces. Now we can start getting into the smaller details. So bringing our original sketch back, can show that. We can start using this to actually cut away what we don't need. So the first thing we're going to cut away is the holes that go just straight through, which is going to be this profile and this profile. So going to cut can click that one. We can click, let's see if it's going to let me, making sure that contour is selected, so we can click that one. And it is going the wrong way, so we want to reverse direction. Actually, I might just make that through or both. We're just going to see what happens. I might need to. Okay, so this one needs to be a closed contour. So we're going to just cancel that command. We need to go back to our sketch, edit, and we just need to close this portion off, and we need to close that one as well. So creating a line, we can just go to there. That creates the profile, and we can go from there to there, and there to there. So that's going to finish our profile for us. Exit the sketch. Okay, now we can cut those bodies out. You can click on the sketch so it knows which one to use. We're going to select contours, clear it if there isn't anything, if there is something there we want. Actually, we don't want that one, so we can clear that. We want this one and this one, and we also want this hole because this hole goes straight through as well. You can reverse the direction, and you can just say up to surface and picking, not that one, so we might go up to, I might just say through hole. Through hole is probably the easiest way. And actually we also need, looking at the hole, yeah, we also need this contour as well. So all these contours just punch straight through. And there we go. Actually, we also need to add the little slot that's in the side here. So we'll just go back, edit that feature. And in our contours, we want to add this contour, and that punches through as well. So now we have those holes, and we start moving on to the next pieces. So with the other holes that cut through, unlike these ones, the slot, this circle, and this, they all just punch straight through. But then when you start looking at the cross section for these holes here, it does have a larger diameter that sort of goes to a certain height, which is 28 from the base. You also have some other holes like this center one. You can see a side profile here. It sort of steps around a little bit differently. So going back to our original drawing, we can do this hole here. So we're going to make another cut. We want to pick the sketch again, and for our contours we want this hole. We want to flip the direction, and this is 28. So this is just going to cut it 28 upwards, and it creates that cut for us. There we go. And I actually missed this contour as well. There is a contour here that should punch all the way through. So we're going to go back again to our original sketch, and we're going to add another line here, which will create another contour for us. And we can exit. And then we're going to go back to our first cut, edit feature, and we're going to add this contour here, because that one also just punches straight through. Okay. Now we need these two circles. There's one that's 43 and there's one that's 50. The 50 is on the underside, so the 50 is going to come up in this side, and our sketch is down here. I need to also edit this sketch because I did the 43, but the 43 is on the top edge, so we might do that first. And in this case, we have to create another sketch on the top, and then doing a circle here, which is 43. And then we just need to cut it in half. So we can do a circle, a line from here to here, and then trim. That creates our profile. Now it's having a little bit of an issue because it is looking at that original sketch. So this one here, we're actually going to get rid of, or we can actually just change the size of it, what it should be. So this one should have been this side here, which is 50 divided by 2 is 25. Wrong one. So I'm going to fix that up. 25. It's going to make it a bit larger. Exit. We're going to ignore that, and we're going to fix this sketch up. So edit sketch. We can delete this one. I'm going to delete this line and just do it again. So doing a circle, 43, I believe it was. Was it 43? Yep. And then a line, and then trim. Okay. So that's creating our top edge. We can now cut this. And this is going to be this top 43, which is 5mm depth. So that gives us our 5mm on top. And then we need to do our bottom 50mm, but this one goes in 11 from this bottom edge. So we do this a different way. So we're going to create another cut, going to pick this sketch, our contour, you can just clear, we're going to do this one as well. What we're going to do is offset from edge, if it lets us, which it's not going to, I don't think. Okay, we're just going to have to use some maths this time. I thought it would give us an offset from edge, but it's not doing it. So we need to figure out what the depth actually is. So if it is going up 28 and then 11, looking at 28 plus 11. So if we're looking at this, we know this bottom edge is where it starts. So it's 28 and then it's plus 11. And we can just put that in as a equation. So it equals 28 plus 11. Seems to be doing both sides for some reason. It's acting a bit weird. Acting very weird for some reason. Equals 28 plus 11. Okay, that should be right for this time. I don't know why it's doing that, but anyway. So that cuts it. And going back to our drawing, I think that is it. We've got our slots, we've got our cuts. We do have these holes on the side, which come in another step. Actually, we do need to do that first. So these holes on the side, which you can see here, it is perpendicular to this line. And the center line of that bolt is 33 across from the center of the circle. It is 10mm. What else have we got? So 33. Oh, yes, there's 16 height. So you want to create, making sure we're picking the right side. So it is on that sort of front edge, which is this edge. So we want to create a sketch, and we want to create a circle and another circle. These are going to be 16 from the base and 33 from here. Now I know it's 33 because if I start to tilt this up, the center of the line actually intersects right on that edge. That's where, if you were to draw a line perpendicular to this, that's exactly where it is, because that line, that circled edge, is tangent and it comes around. So it is perpendicular. I know that's where the 33 is dimensioned from. We also need to add two circular dimensions, which are the, if I can find it again, yes, 14 and 8. So we got this one is 8, this one is 14, and then close. So we can now cut this, but the thing is, it doesn't actually, well, it does give you, sorry, it does say 22. So to work this out, we know this outside diameter is 35. So we know it's 35 from here to here, plus 22 is that top edge of the drilled hole. So we can cut that, and we can say 35 plus 22, and then cut. And that's going to cut it all the way through. And then the final one is 10. So this is another cut, reusing the same sketch. So you might have to expand the menu and going back to here. We can clear these contours, and we want the outside one, and we make that 10. And there we have our drilled hole through that side. The final piece we need to make is this kind of cutout that goes around the center. So this one we actually need to create a new plane, and then I find it's probably easier just to do a circle, offset it a little bit, and cut it through the mid plane. So we're going to create a plane using our reference geometry. We'll pick the top and this side, and this is going to, if you pick two faces, it's going to put the new plane directly in the middle of those two. So we now have a plane right in the middle. We can click on it, go to Sketch, and we go from, it's a little tricky, but I want to bring it down and go straight up, drag this one down. I can convert entities, this outside and this line. And then I need to offset this circle, which is going to be an offset of, where does it tell you? Okay, here you got radius of 33 is this inside. So I know 35 and 33, so I know it's a 2 mil gap. So I can offset entities. This one, don't want bidirectional. I want to reverse. I want to turn off the end caps, and I just need to make this 2. And there we go. Bring this over here. And now just to clean it up, I can hide this plane. I don't really need it, but I'll turn it off in a sec. Anyway, so we trim, just trim these two lines. We trim this one, we trim here, these two, and this one. And there we go. That's our profile that we're now going to cut from the center. We can close. We don't need this geometry anymore, this plane, so we can hide. Might do it from over here. Okay, hide. And then we cut. We're going to select that sketch we just created. This time it's going to be mid plane, so it's cutting both sides, and it has a height of 17. So we put in 17, click OK, and we are done with that one. So we pretty much have all the pieces in place now. We can hide this sketch because we don't really need this anymore, and save. Always make sure you save your work. And as you can see, we now have all the main bodies and features that we need, and we can just mirror that over to the other side. So we are going to do a mirror. We want to select bodies to mirror, so we don't have to select all the features. We can just pick the entire body. The mirror face plane, we're going to use our right plane because we know that right plane is right in the center and it's mirroring across. Make sure merge solids is ticked. That way it's going to just create one whole body. And there we go. So that is our mirrored feature. The final step we need to do, or one of the final steps we need to do, is start adding all these radius edges. So there's radiuses in here, all these filleted edges, all these filleted edges need to be added. So we have them in all the insides, and they are all 2 millimeters. So you can see all of them are 2 millimeter fillets. So we can use our fillet tool. We are going to make sure it is set to 2 millimeters. And we can just start picking the edges. So it should select a loop for you. What else? We know it's this one. We know it's this edge. This one also has it. And then don't forget the underside. So this edge, this edge, this one, and this one. And that should be all of our 2 millimeter fillets. So we know there's none on here, there's none on here. It does kind of look like there is one here, but it doesn't really work when you try. These do not have them, and that's pretty much it. There is more on the inside edge here, but they are actually chamfers instead of fillets. It's pointed out in one area. I'm just trying to find it. Okay, over here, 2 times 45. So that means it's a chamfer of 2 millimeters at a 45 degree. So we do our fillets first, pick all those, and then we want to do the chamfer. make sure it is 2 mils, 45 degrees, and we pick this edge and this edge. And there we go. And that's it. And the final step I like to do, which I picked up from the Model Mania challenges, is to just put some color on these fillets. It just makes them look a little more, it makes it stand out a little more. So what you can do is you just click on the fillet, click on Appearance, and then the fillet. Wait for a second, and you'll see this menu pop up. Pick a color like red, click OK, and that way all the fillets are done in a red, and it just makes it stand out a little more, makes it a little more obvious where those fillets actually are. I don't bother about the chamfers because they tend to be straight cuts, and I think if you may want to do a separate color for chamfers, but I think the fillets are fine. And if you want the actual model to have a bit of color to it, you can either do the same thing, or what you can do is assign a material to it. So edit material. And if you want something shiny, you might do like a, let's see, maybe an alloy steel, apply that material, and that just gives it a little bit of color. Save your work, and if you really want to make it look a bit nicer, you can turn on your real graphics, ambient occlusion, and perspective as well. And there you go. That's how you do this model. So there's a few little tricks. I think the main things are do half of it mirrored across instead of doing the whole sketch and mirroring that. I find it is a little bit quicker just to do half the model and then mirror the whole body across. Also using intersect bodies, so instead of trying to create a large block and then cutting away at the material you don't need, it's easier to create two bodies that intersect and create the material that you need. So I hope you learned some stuff from this challenge. If you did attempt to do it yourself and you did it, I hope you did well. Until the next video, where I'll find something else similar to this, and I'll put our skills to the test and see how we can create more challenges like this in the future.